that was a bit of a nightmare. We're going to be going over my most frequently asked question today, or I should say questions, which is how did I become a therapist and how did I start my private practice? So welcome back, friends. If you are new here, my name is Simone Saunders and I am a licensed therapist in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I also own a group practice called the Cognitive Corner. We are a team of 6 now. So I have all of my notes in here ready to go so I don't miss a beat. If you have any questions, comments, want me to make videos on anything in specific, drop that down below and I will shoot you a reply. So as you know, my background is in social work, and one of the questions that I often get is why did you choose social work over psychology or licensed marriage family therapist? The big thing is in Canada is the two most popular options are social work and psychology. So with social work, I kind of fell into it a little bit, but I knew that with psychology, my options were a little bit more limited. So with social work, there's so many different options of work that you can do if you don't want to be in mental health. You can work in a hospital, you can work in a school, you could do casework, you could do children's services. There's so many different things that you can do that's within the mental health field, outside of the mental health field, that kind of just gives you a little bit more options if you aren't really sure what you want to do at the beginning. Granted, I was 18 at the time that I was kind of making these decisions, so I wasn't really sure that I even wanted to be a therapist in the beginning. Initially, I wanted to go into family law and I wanted some sort of mental health undergrad to support that, and I chose social work partly because I wanted to move out of my house and I wanted to move to a different city and go to college with my friends. Also partly because I have family in social work. My mom is in the mental health field, so it all just kind of made sense at the time. So where I started was a social work diploma. So that is a 2-year diploma program, and once you're finished it, you can practice sort of as a social worker, at least in Alberta, I believe in Ontario and perhaps some other provinces as well. So again, I wasn't super sure what I wanted to really do with my life. I knew I kind of wanted to be in law. So the diploma route really worked for me to give me a taste of what social work was even about. It was a 2-year program, and I will admit that like the first year I did not do well. I was in my party girl era, didn't really take school too seriously. But when I started to learn more about mental health, that's when I started to kind of pique my interest, and I was like, oh, okay, this might be an area that I want to go into more. One of the things that I really liked about the diploma program was the practicum opportunities. With a undergrad, the 4-year degree, you get practicum opportunities as well, but from my understanding, I believe you get 2 practicums. Whereas I got 2 practicums in my diploma program and then 1 practicum in my degree program. So it gave me overall 3 practicum experiences, which also lended to me having more experience, field experience, which allows you to get better jobs. So the first practicum experience that I had was at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and it was okay. It was a good entry level practicum. I was mostly learning about the children and sort of the administrative side of things. And then my second practicum was in a group home, and that one I really enjoyed and I really learned a lot. And again, that's where my interest and passion for mental health started to grow again, because I was working with kids who struggled with their mental health and were in a group home as a result of that. And so because of my ability to be hands-on in that sense, I really started to enjoy it. After I graduated from my diploma, I then immediately transferred to do my full degree. So that was another 2 years. So it took me the same amount of time to do an undergrad than it would take anybody else. The one thing that I will say is doing the diploma program and then the undergrad, I did find the latter 2 years a little bit repetitive. So my bachelor's degree went pretty smoothly. My third and final practicum for my degree was in the hospital on a psychiatry unit. That one I really enjoyed, and at that point I did think that I perhaps wanted to do social work, but hospital social work. Hospital social work primarily is doing needs assessments, figuring out accommodations, food, finances, and sort of post-hospital support. I will say that that was probably my favorite practicum experience, and the reason being because I learned so much about mental health from the clinical side of it. So one of the downsides I would say about the social work degree is in the bachelor's, you don't really get a large understanding of the clinical side of mental health. You do learn about mental health, you do explore a lot of these different things, but it's not as robust as say, a psychology degree where that is the primary focus. So social work has a little bit more of a holistic lens than I would say psychology does. Throughout my bachelor's degree over the summers, I primarily worked at group homes, and then one summer I was able to get a job at the Children's Hospital here in Calgary, and I was working on the mental health unit. My position title was a psychosocial rehabilitation therapy assistant. So that again gave me way more exposure to the clinical side of things and how to handle especially extreme mental health difficulties. And doing therapeutic work with children at the time really made me want to focus on children for my career. By my 4th year of my undergrad / 2nd year of my post-diploma program, I kind of had dropped the idea of wanting to be a lawyer. And I knew that mental health, the therapy space, something within that realm was something that I really wanted to do. So I worked at the Children's Hospital for quite some time, and then after I graduated from my degree, I worked at a nonprofit agency doing some counseling. For reference, with the proper supervision, registered social workers can also provide counseling. And I know that that is specific to Alberta, and I believe also Ontario. I'm not sure about other provinces, but from the time you have your diploma and complete your diploma, you can become registered. So I would say that that's another benefit of social work, is that you can kind of start getting experience a little bit earlier. So I've been in the counseling therapy space for quite some time, since I finished my undergrad, which was 2017. Within that nonprofit, I was primarily working with trauma, and so that was something that really stood out to me as something I really wanted to learn more about, because I was working actually with adults, not with children. So throughout my time in that agency, I was able to be a part of a bunch of trainings and get a really robust understanding of trauma, what it looks like, practice different interventions and all of that. So when I was in that agency, I then decided that, okay, I want to do my master's. I also want to open private practice at some point in time. So I enrolled in the master's program, which was a 2-year online program. So the program was a master's in clinical social work with a specialization in trauma. I worked throughout my entire master's degree. Because the master's was part-time and in the evenings, I will say that I found that quite difficult to work while also going to school. I didn't necessarily find the workload hard. I found the workload to be fairly manageable. I think you just have to be in so many different minds when you're doing school and doing work. But I also did find them to complement each other, because the things that I was learning in school were also things that I could implement and try and practice in real time. Towards the end of my master's degree is when I did my final practicum, which was at a general counseling agency. That was a bit of a nightmare. The only thing that I will say about my practicum experience is that the reason that it was a nightmare was because it was an agency that prioritized as many clients as possible versus the quality of care. Because I had an understanding of what a comfortable caseload felt like, I really struggled with overworking myself, burning out, and meeting the expectations of the agency, knowing that they wanted me to kind of just do client after client after client, regardless of the time and space that I had to educate myself on the presenting problems, the time and space I had for consultation, the time and space that I had for my own regulation, my own process. So my biggest tip is make sure that your final practicum, especially if you are in psychology, is an agency that you can stand behind, an agency that cares about your mental and physical and emotional well-being, that cares about the client's well-being. Because I think when you don't have that, and if you also don't have previous experience in the field, it can feel really discouraging, and it can almost sometimes make you not want to do the work, because you're like, if this is what my life is going to look like post-grad, I don't want this. While I was in the nonprofit agency, I decided to start an Instagram page. And the purpose of that page was purely psychoeducational. I wasn't really sure what I really wanted to come out of that page. I knew I wanted to start private practice at some point, and perhaps I could just, put my name out there eventually. But I didn't necessarily anticipate it to expand the way that it did. So in December of 2019 is when I started the Facebook and Instagram page for the Cognitive Corner. I was consistently posting, I would say 3-4 times a week, regardless of the likes, regardless of the comments, because it was crickets in the beginning. It was crickets. So if you're also starting an Instagram or a TikTok or whatever it is for your business and it's crickets at the beginning, expect it. That is normal. Now we're transitioning into the piece of how I started my private practice. So The Instagram and Facebook pages were kind of the first thing. June 2020 was when I left the nonprofit agency, and then in September 2020 I started with a primary care clinic as a social worker. I would say that it was a little bit heavier on the case management side. I was also still fairly heavy into practicum. Throughout this period, my Instagram and my TikTok, I was still keeping up with those pages. 2021 was when I opened up the business. So in preparation for private practice, I was building a website, I was building intake forms, like all of these different things months and months and months and months before. And I didn't actually anticipate going into private practice until probably October of 2021. I ended up going into private practice May of 2021. In February of 2021 was when I started my TikTok page. So that page blew up almost immediately, and the traction from my TikTok grew my Instagram as well. And people started inquiring about my private practice, and I wasn't quite ready to open. I was like, I'm not sure. I wanted to keep my job with the primary care clinic that I was at and do that part-time while slowly building my private practice. That was my initial idea and my initial goal, so that I could slowly transition into private practice and then slowly out of 9 to 5. At that point, because I was transferring into a new position at the clinic, I was hit with kind of the decision of, do I stay with the clinic or do I do private practice? Because I wouldn't be able to do both. The hours for the clinic were more than I could handle doing another job on the side. I talked to my dad, I talked to my boyfriend at the time, I talked to my brother, I talked to my friends, and I was just rattled with this decision because I was really, really worried that I was going to make a mistake, that I was going to jump into private practice and it wouldn't be financially sustainable, and then the job at the clinic would be gone. Because for reference, working for the Provincial Health Authority is one of the most secure jobs that you can have. You're probably never going to get fired unless you do something crazy. It's probably the highest wage that you will make because it's government. Flexible vacation, all of the things that you would probably want in a secure job. I made the best decision that I probably could have ever made, which was to bet on myself. I declined the position with the health authority. I started private practice because I had all my stuff set up pretty much anyways, and I've never looked back. Over time, what I've learned in terms of what is the most important in private practice is marketing. People need to know who you are in order to go to you. Financial literacy, because at the beginning it's going to be expensive. Organization, you need to have your shit together. You just have to. And self-confidence, because it's very easy to get discouraged when you have your own business. It is so easy. And my mom will attest to this, is that I was so scared for so long. What if my business just shuts down? What if people just stop wanting to come to me? What if? You can make yourself crazy with those thoughts. You can make yourself absolutely crazy. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing that's going to keep pushing you through is consistency. Find something that works and repeat it over and over and over and over again. Now, social media is one of the biggest marketing tools that we use in the company. And that's the thing that kind of started out as something that worked. You really have to be strategic in your marketing. What makes you different? What makes your approach different? Who are the people that you can help the best? And how do you reach those people? How do you speak to those people? Of course, there's going to be trial and error. You're going to figure out what works, what doesn't work. But figure out how you're going to put yourself out there and then start to work backwards from there. What does your website look like? How are people going to reach you? Is it only email? Do you have a phone that they can text or call? Do you offer free consultations? And I think that you really have to put yourself in the client's shoes in order to say, like, what would I need in order to say, like, yeah, I want to work with that person. So initially it was just me, and then I slowly started to scale up. Right now we have 4 therapists, including myself, and then 2 people on the operations team. So there's an operations and media manager, and then an administrative assistant. Once your practice starts to get bigger, if you're someone who is thinking about a group practice, or if you just can't handle a lot of these things on your own, I would highly recommend onboarding either administrative assistant or an operations manager, again, depending on what your practice is going to look like in the future, because it helps offload a lot of the stuff. Because you have to realize, working in private practice, you're not just a therapist anymore. You are a therapist, you are a marketer, you are a business owner, you are a manager, depending on if you have other people that's working with you. So many different hats. so many different hats. And it can get overwhelming. It probably will get overwhelming, but I think expecting it to go overwhelming, expecting things to go wrong, expecting to make mistakes, that is something that has helped me tremendously. And I still get anxiety, I still get overwhelmed, I still get just discombobulated, but the difference is I just expect that to happen. So if you're someone who is starting grad school, starting your bachelor's, starting private practice, or just thinking about private practice, I truly believe it's worth it. I think that the work-life balance is one of the things that makes this the most worth it. If you have any thoughts or specific questions that you'd like me to answer, I'm happy to answer it in the comment section or do a follow-up video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.